The Alien Cosmic Expo will be held in Brantford, Ontario, June 26, 27, 28, and will feature 24 internationally acclaimed experts and researchers of UFOs, crop circles, alien abductions, and much more in this 3-day 2015 summer Canadian event. Experts in the field of extraterrestrials and alien encounters, out-of-body experiences, past life regression, soul reading, psychic, and mediumship will all be presented with professionalism, integrity, and credibility, making the Alien Cosmic Expo the largest event of its kind in Canada for 2015. The exhibitor hall will feature a spectacular lineup of gifted mediums, psychics, astrologers, channelers, aura photography, healers, as well as books, DVDs, alternative health products, crystals, jewelry, and much more, completing the venue with something for everyone. For all information and to purchase your tickets for the Alien Cosmic Expo, go to www.aliencosmicexpo.com. That's www.aliencosmicexpo.com.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Starcom Radio Network. Worldwide, toll-free 800-610-7035, extension 0. And you can send an email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our main website where you can listen to the X Zone 724-365, as well as get all the latest news about the X Zone, what we're doing, who our guests are going to be. And the website is www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is a lady we've had the opportunity of having on the show before. Her name is ALEXANDRA HOLZER, and she is a second-generation ghost hunter and writer. And she is no stranger to the world of the supernatural, publishing, or art. Joining me now is ALEXANDRA HOLZER. And ALEXANDRA, welcome back to the X Zone. It's been way too long.
I know, Rob. Thank you so much for having me back. It's a sheer pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are one busy lady, for goodness. You've got books. You're doing so much. Where do you find the time?
I don't find the time, which I guess would attribute to the high stress levels, Rob. So I don't know. I'm kind of doing what my father did. You have the children. You write. You investigate. You research. You theorize. You put things out there, and you delve into film and TV, and so I can't escape it, unfortunately.
For those of the X Zone Nation who are just joining us lately, can you tell them about yourself and who your dad is and who your mom is?
Absolutely. My father was the late Dr. Hans Holzer. He was a parapsychologist born from Vienna, Austria, and he came over to America, and basically it was the hands of famed Irish medium Eileen Garrett that had met my father at a dinner party and suggested that he take his interests further and publish them into a book, which kind of helmed the first book called Ghost Hunter in 1963, which really burst his case findings into the literary world so people could read what it was that he was fascinated by since he was a little boy, age 5. He became known as the father of the paranormal, the original ghost hunter, and so he just kept going with that, and he delved into the occult and spirituality and healing, and tried to help people understand what happens to us where we go when we die, and really wanted to help that healing process and not make it scary or anything like that. And so Dr. Hans Holzer really kind of got his hands into everything, and it kind of melded over into In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. He was on all the talk shows back then. And so why we called him the modern pioneer of the paranormal was because he really was the face for it, because he came out and said, listen, it's okay to talk about a ghost. It's okay to understand what we become when we pass. My mother was Countess Catherine Buxhovenen. She's still with us. And her family is related to Catherine the Great. My grandfather was the Russian Count Alexander Buxhovenen, and he himself had an interest in the paranormal, where in Milano, Italy, they had lived in a castle, and he held seances there. And so when my parents had met, it was kind of interesting how they both had that background and backstory, and so that's where I come from, pretty much.
Tell me, what have we learned over the years since your dad started being the foundation and the cornerstone of parapsychology when it comes to ghosts? What is a ghost?
Good question. Well, what have we learned? Well, history has shown us we've had photography for a very long time. Mm-hmm. We've had EVPs for a very long time, and I think it really rests on the laurels of those that feel of what they see, what they feel they believe or they don't believe. It's a respect factor, and the evidence has been there for a very long time. But he himself and his forefathers before him, like Carrington, Price, and Fodder, had really worked very hard to try to explain to the general public that there is something that happens to us when we pass, and what is that? And through photography and EVP sessions, through basic recorders when they came out, really showcase that there is something there we can't explain, and not to dismiss it. Now, it's not to mix into what is of the past, let's say 5 years of the digital age and internet and so forth. We had all that prior to. Now, if we go towards today where we are now, it's very heightened and it's very muddled, so it's a little bit confusing. And what was the second part of your question?
How things have changed over the years, from when your dad started to where you picked up the torch and are continuing into this fascinating world of parapsychology.
Yeah. Well, I think today, and it's a good. I touched a little bit upon that before. I think is because of the upsurge in our pop culture curiosity, which when my father came into his own, which actually began in the 40s, in the 1940s. He was a skeptic journalist first and foremost. He questioned everything. His job was not to know everything. So that's when he kind of embraced mediumship and psychics and clairaudience and clairvoyance, as we have many labels for that, and our gifts of what we can and can't do, as a tool versus the electronic sensation of what is, I feel, and what I think many believe is today, is having something in your hand to show for the experience that you're having and that happening. When he was doing the investigations and the research, he also believed that we ourselves are tools, but he didn't put himself in that role for a very long time. Today, we really don't turn to transmediumship or mediums the way he had used them, because we do have a lot of what we call quote-unquote gadgets. And it's kind of relatively, not a put-down, but I think it's kind of overrun. And so for today, we're not using parapsychology. We're not using the science of physical research, which is really the proper term versus paranormal. And so we've kind of got lost in our ways. And he really honed in on a very simple formula of creating a theory and then trying to go out and prove that theory. And today, because of the Internet, because of YouTube, and because of TV shows, we've kind of gotten muddled in that mix, and we really don't know what's what at times, and some of it's entertainment, and some of it is leaving us with open questions, and the rest of us are out there with our own organizations and groups wanting to find out for ourselves what happens to us when we pass. And then there's the other part of demonic activity and poltergeist activity, and that's a whole different subject matter, of course, because there's just not one we can, tap into, as you know, of course, Rob, so...
The internet, I call it the largest septic tank that man has ever created, because there is so much crap in there. And, here you are trying your best with other researchers who are doing it for the right reason, because they want answers to questions, and yet there are so many charlatans out there disguising themselves as researchers. How does someone just coming into the fold who has a genuine interest, how do they know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, it's every man for themselves and woman. You really, nowadays, you have to be very quick like a whip and sharp as a tech, because the fact that there's so much out there because of the internet, like you said, and because of YouTube and that, you really can't just go and watch things and say, oh, that must be real. It looked real. We have what we call apps today. What was an app back then? It didn't exist. You had whatever photography, whatever electronic devices you had, and you had field workers, and you had teams of psychologists and mediums and so forth, and scientists and labs to process your film. Today, I would say to those that are coming into it, either if they're hobbyists or they're doing it, for 20 years, and they know as well, or those that are coming into it for the past couple of years, you don't turn to just, watching something on television or watching a YouTube clip of somebody supposedly, quote unquote, because it's not proven. We don't have the ability to prove what they're showing is happening, because we're not in that moment. We're not in the environment. We can't capture, well, what was the time of day, the lighting, the environment. Was it raining? Who was there? Who was the witness? Is it a controlled environment? So without that access, Rob, when we watch those things today, for those coming into it like you've asked, it's a very tricky situation. So I say to people, go back and learn who those were in history. My father is being one of them. And read the books that were written on the research published, because it's public access. And go and put it together yourself, and go out there yourself and explore, and have the pieces of equipment you feel comfortable with, and the people you can trust. It's a loyalty situation. You can't just go into an environment and say, well, we're just going to go and hunt down ghosts. It's a horrible term to begin with. Back when my father was called the ghost hunter, it wasn't meant for that. Nowadays, I feel like people are almost trending to just go, I want to feel something, I want to experience something, which I understand. However, that's part of research, is to also respect the environment. So I always tell people, please read who came before you, read the books, stay away from TV, first and foremost. That is the first thing. It's entertainment purposes only. And read, watch documentaries, know who did what, and learn from that, and then go and find your way and see what you're experiencing, because it's a very personal thing as well. So
there's a lot of television shows out there like you were discussing. The reality shows, I find, are anything but real.
Correct.
Like,
you're correct.
People will sit down, they watch them, and they get so they just get right into it. The shaky camera angles, the night shots, the shaky camera movement, people screaming. Like, is that how it really happens?
No, it doesn't. And if it happened that way, Rob, let's say we were filming our investigation, and there was a moment where somebody got shoved or pushed, because as we all know, if you're a very difficult person in life and you haven't been able to cross, and so you're stuck as a ghost, you can still have that animosity towards life. So therefore, if you feel to push me, you can conjure up that energy to tap my shoulder and push me forward, or do something even further, maybe scratch me, or, and that does happen. But, in real time, it's a very kind of unusual situation, because we're not filming to capture it right away within, a 30-minute or hour episode with commercials in between. So it's edited, and we don't edit life. And life happens and it unfolds before our eyes, and that includes those that are stuck in between life and death. And that's really the reality of that. That's a reality.
What has been your most frightening experience as a ghost researcher? I hate the term hunter, because when you hunt something, you track it and kill it.
Exactly, like a deer. Correct.
Exactly, right.
Correct. Well, I think my most out of control, I would say, situation where I felt like I was not in control of the environment. I felt that I was out of the element of being a human being, where I'm dealing with something that's not of this world but once was. I was in a prison in West Virginia, and I was pushed. And it was a very controlled environment. We were filming. It was a very good example to use because you had 30 people around, and it was busy and bustling and hustling and not quiet whatsoever. Lights were blaring around, and I was literally pushed on my right shoulder off a chair while I was getting situated. And I sat there and I said, okay, I'm not going to panic or freak out because I'm amongst a crew.
Right.
It's not professional. But I said it wasn't inside of me to be that way anyway. But I questioned everything while it was happening. I had to process it, you see. And it actually, after the fact, I had to process it throughout the night as to what did I just experience. And what I had experienced was somebody who was in the prison, obviously who wasn't a very good person, who didn't like me or like me being there for whatever reason. I didn't have any answers. I didn't speak to them. I couldn't give you any facts because I didn't have them. But I had the physical presence of it and the physical touch. And I said, well, that energy is still there, and it was angry for whatever reason, and it came after me, and that was it. And that really shook me because it made me realize that they can still come, and although we don't have the physical self, have that energy culminating to push as a force against the physical of what they once were. And
Right.
I thought that was very interesting, and I said, well, how do they do that? So it gave me more questions more than answers. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Is it possible that the ghost knew that you were very perceptive and you had the ability to feel what the others in the crowd may not have had the ability to do, and this is why he chose you to give this sign that, hey, I am here?
Possibly, absolutely. And even though they could have been a bad person, because, again, in my environment was a prison.
Yeah.
So we know that it's not a good environment. The first thing is negative, I think, right away as I'm processing. Very possibly could have been, hey, pay attention to me. Talk to me. Because
Right.
one of the things that I theorized and that my father had felt was they're looking for that voice from the other end of it. Now, I don't say the other side of it because they haven't crossed. If they're still there, they're lingering. And they're not impressions of a grade A haunting. They're stuck, in which I always explain what a ghost is. They're stuck. If we're a spirit, we're free. Free spirit, where the term comes from, is they can come and go as they please. So it could very well have been, pay attention to me, I need to talk, but I had no way of communicating in such a way that I could really fathom what it was that they needed to say, good or bad. So very possibly.
How do you prepare yourself for an investigation?
One of the first things that I do is, I know a lot of people, they tend to turn towards religion or certain rituals, or they talk to their group, or they talk to themselves. I, for one, I call out to the guides that are assigned to me that I believe in. My father believed that before we are born, we are assigned spirit guides. So after birth, that we have this spirit guide. It could be singular or plural throughout our walk of life, how long that lifespan is. And so I've learned that through as a child. And so I call out the first people, if you will, to my spirit guides. And I'm not saying they're of this world. They could have been not of this world, but that they were assigned to my soul. And I ask for protection. And I ask for guidance, and I ask for no negativity, and that whatever I go into, to please guide me and help me do the right assessment, not get harmed, and to help. And so it's the very first place that I go to.
How do you convince people that Poltergeist, the movie, and a lot of the other paranormal movies that come out of the big studios in Hollywood are just make-believe?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, it kind of correlates into the same thing with the TV shows. Now, with the films, I feel, in theory, there's more of a respect factor when you go and watch a film based on what a ghost is or poltergeists or things like that. So, the best reference, in layman's terms, is Paranormal Activity, where they emulate the YouTube sensations of organizations or groups or teams going out there and filming themselves and having activity and so forth. I think that the perception with a film when you walk out of the theater is, oh my God, versus a TV show, you're like, maybe not, maybe so.
Right.
It's a different reality because how you visualize as a human being is a huge impact on what you take home with you when it comes to paranormal activity. And not to do a pun on the film, but however, it's been a term before that film. I feel there's a difference in how we view things as human beings that really impacts us. And I feel like film versus TV on the same subject matter has two different correlations. So it really is dependent on what that person would be viewing it and how.
When we talk about ghosts, spirits, demonic possession, poltergeists, people always remember the Amityville Horror.
Yes.
How true to life was that film?
Well, there were many films, as you know, based on Amityville.
Mm-hmm.
I can only speak to the film that was based off of Father's research, the Amityville 2, The Possession. I had gone out to L.A. A year and a half ago to pick up that mantle for Father because he had obviously had passed. And I had done some voiceovers and so forth, but I had to also, I did something called The Hunt, which was a 30-minute interview for Red Shirt Pictures to basically go into the depths of the film itself, the case itself, and my father's part in it. And, his whole theory on it being possessing Ronald DeFeo Jr. Because of the grounds being sacred via India burial grounds and using mediumship with Ethel Johnson Myers, which was a very, very distinguished older woman who had worked with my father. He had chosen her to go on that particular case out in Long Island at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was out of respect and so forth. It wasn't anything gimmicky. There was nothing demonic in that sense, but that possession itself, especially in the 70s, was a relatively interesting term, and it was the first time that the courts heard that term because my father had really felt and believed with the information and with the medium and the town information going to the librarian, town historian, and so forth, that you could be taken over for whatever reason. And that it wasn't the house, that the property itself, that it was farmland before, was very bad soil, that there was negativity prior to the house, which incidentally had been moved to 112 Ocean Avenue. It was not the original spot of the home, and
Wow.
back then and still today, we do move houses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of history there prior to getting to ghosts and demons and so forth, and then that was part of my father. He was a historian. Many films have been made on it. It really, to me, my impression from reading other people's work on it, seeing the other films, my own father's work on it, property itself can culminate the negativity that could create an atmosphere for a family, for a dwelling to inhabit the continuity of that negativity that could possibly create murder, could create what was already seated in one person that was not such a great person and catapult them towards that edge where they could possibly pull the trigger or stab somebody. And that's really where I feel. And I feel that globally there are many sites like that. Do you see what I'm saying? But Amityville, of course, was Amityville, unfortunately.
Exonation, my guest this hour is Alexandra Holzer. Her website is www.alexandraholzer.com. And fascinating lady. It was your dad's work, Alexandra, that was partially responsible for this show. I read his books, and it's true. It's true. It's
very flattering. Thank you.
I know it's I who thank you, and I'm so happy to see you carrying the torch in such a responsible and respectful way. The Exorcist, the movie.
Yes.
How real?
Well, now The Exorcist. Well, there have been films also based off of The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
One example is a couple of colleagues of mine, originally hailed from the UK, called the Booth Brothers, had done a documentary based off of The Exorcist, and they delved into the diaries that were found on the real boy that had gone through that story. Not in the same location, but just based on the supposed inspiration, if you will, for The Exorcist. Now, I also know of a TV show that had gone to the location of where they filmed to kind of bring about that story. And a woman that I had met at a conference, well-known actress and huge animal lover and pit bull lover is Linda Blair, had gone and done the show as well. But as far as the truth of the story, I mean, I think the origination of the story came from the Booth brothers' findings called The Haunted Boy, if I'm not mistaken, if it's the correct title or not, where they delved into the diaries of this child that was possessed and taken over. And so it kind of, a lot of these films that come out, a lot of people have to realize there are inspirations that come before that from real documented cases that were taken, and then they create that film. The film gets greenlit, and then boom, it's called The Exorcist. But it's not to not say it didn't happen, and it didn't happen to this one kid or others before him and after him. So I feel there is a lot of realness to it, but that actual location and the whole thing, a lot of Hollywood, and The Exorcist house and all this stuff. I mean, again, it's very difficult because we weren't there, and if you don't have that information, it's so hard. You kind of go on as a spectator, if you will. But there is a theory that it was based off of these diaries, and that's how the film was born. A lot of my father's work has been inspirations for other things as well. There was a film with John Cusack. I don't know if it's Room 207 or something.
Yes.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they took the John Cusack's character took the H name, which was supposed to emulate my father in that film, and he stayed all night in that hotel room, which turned into a paranormal situation. So it happens, and I think there is truth to The Exorcist, but how the film is itself is about 50% away from the actual findings from these diaries that were found.
So you mean
I think it's called A Haunted Boy.
So you mean there's not the coldness in the room, the stench, the levitation?
Well, the coldness in the room you'll find in cases of ghosts and also demonic activity. You will find that as well, absolutely, because again, it's we call it spirit cold, if you will. But the temperature will drop. But that doesn't mean it's a demon. It just means that you have an energy field that's coming into your energy field, and you're of the living. They're not of the living. So you're correlating the two fields. The energy fields are kind of battling hot and cold. The temperature will drop right away. Now, the bad smell, it's almost like a rotten egg smell. We say demonic. It's evil. It's not to say it's a demon, but it's not of a positive presence. So that is a very evil presence, negative, angry, festering. We don't know the story on why they became that way, but they're there. They're in that moment. They're in your environment. That happens. It's almost like a sulfur smell.
Right.
That does occur as well. Levitation. That I'm not. I don't know any cases right now. I haven't seen anything out in the news, and I haven't read too much on it as far as if people actually get levitated, other than Ghostbusters. However, great film. We can go there as well. With Sigourney Weaver's character where she levitates, I said, hey, I'd love to do that. And I would turn to my father and say, could you make it happen? He'd be like, nonsense. I don't do that. Okay, whatever. But, Rob, I had to try.
Oh, gosh. Tell me about The Hunt with Holzer.
Yes. The Hunt with Holzer is a global organization that I began with David Lawson, where we both are researchers. He's, theorizes and also on the spiritual end of embracing and using shamanism and trying to calm the environment and not be afraid. You can't have fear because we're trying to understand. And so if we're afraid, first and foremost, because something goes bump in the night or we hear something that the client is saying, the first thing is not to be afraid. The first thing is to hear and learn and embrace. The organization is meant to carry on Father's work, but also propel it forward towards the future of not just using inundated, updated electronic equipment, but to also bring it back into the time and place of peace and meditation and really understanding where you are at that location, and put away your camera, put down your recorder, and feel the environment as you become that tool, which goes alongside of my father's work when he worked with mediums and what other gifts that they had, like we talked about early in the show, of being a clairaudient or clairvoyant and so forth. And so all that combined with the Hunt with Holzer is we really try to get our information based off of many types of formulas and not just based on one. And then we also do events where if we're asked to speak, we will. We share theories, and we're all one. You see, there's no competition. We're all trying to understand the meaning of life, where we go when we pass, negative impacts, positive impacts, and so forth. And so that's kind of what we're about. And it's the only second-generation organization out there because, unfortunately, I've been born into something quite rare. So it's really continuing on that bloodline, if you will.
Tell me, with all the different religions in the world and all the different philosophies in the world, when it comes to ghosts, hauntings, the strange, the weird, the bizarre, is there any one common thread that you have seen in all the people who have had these experiences?
Good question. I'm not sure. I almost feel like, as much as in the past we know what we know, we've seen what we've seen, and then the experiences of today, I'm not quite sure that and much has changed. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like it's a bit frustrating, actually, because you would hope that many would take it on to that next level and take the experiences from the past to today, to the technology, and say, okay, I've learned this, I've learned that, I've moved forward, I understand this, I don't understand that. But I kind of feel like, unfortunately, we go back to what you were saying, TV shows.
What about EVP, electronic voice phenomena?
Yes.
What is your take on that?
That's been around for a while. My father actually recorded off of his Sony and Panasonic tape recorders.
Right.
With a microphone. Back then it was attached. It was probably weighed about 40 pounds versus our little digital today.
Yeah.
But they still do the same thing. EVPs, in my opinion, are still wonderful ways to capture the audio of those that need to speak from beyond, that are without their vessel, which is our body. And that's the best way I can put it. I think EVPs are still one of the best ways that we can hear and piece together. It's just a little bit frustrating because of the fact that it's not giving us all the information quickly, you see? And I feel there's an impatience in society where we're not getting enough in real time. And I feel when the Ovulus came out, the whole purpose of the Ovulus was to speed up that information, to say, okay, we have a full sentence versus words being broken out, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
we live in a time where everything is instantaneous. You know,
correct.
The internet, we all carry iPads, the iPhones. You want information, bang, you get it. And how does all this different technology with the microwaves, the cell towers, the Wi-Fis, the different RF frequencies that are out there, how do these newfangled transmission devices affect the spirits, the ghosts?
You want my opinion?
Yeah.
I think the ghosts are sitting there laughing at us and going, ha ha, that's all you got? That's it? You humans are crazy. I think, honestly, and my experience only because my father, when I had done my first ghost box session, I listen to them and I go back and forth, and I feel a frustration from those that have passed that are trying to communicate and those that are stuck that are trying to communicate. If I were to put myself in a deceased person's position where I'm in a house and I don't want to leave for whatever reason, and or in that same thought process, put myself in a position where I've crossed over but I need to get my words to you
right
now, I would be frustrated because we really, they're ahead of us. So they're sitting there probably saying things in the background, and I've heard a lot of EVP sessions over the years saying, oh, my God, this person's an idiot or whatever. I mean, they get pretty rude depending on who they are. Yeah. we're not quick enough for them. So the time that it takes for us to get or decipher the information, they're 10 steps ahead of us because they can't. We can't. And so I feel that they're frustrated because they can't sit down with us and say, listen, let me give you your Aunt Mary's soup recipe and be done with it. And by the way, watch the right tire on your car because tomorrow it's going to go flat and you're going to have an accident. So do me a favor and call the mechanic. Do you know what I mean? I mean, they can't just come and do that, and they want to. And so why I feel in theory they come to us more in dreams and our subconscious, which a lot of times I always tell people, pay more attention to your dreams than your EVP and or ovula sessions because they'll be able to have a fuller conversation with you at that point. And so to be more aware of that and not to dismiss those dreams because I feel that's more of a communication connector between them and us versus a lot of these electronics.
Alexandra, based on your experience on both sides of life, what happens to us when we die?
Good question. I feel what happens to us when we die is one of two things. If we cross and we go over, and we can call it going towards the light, catching up with our loved ones and our guides to pull us over and welcome us to our new life, I feel in that, and we'll say type A, type of passing, I feel that there are a lot of questions that are answered that we can't possibly know living, that we are only to be told when we pass, and it's almost like a secret, if you will. And we're more wiser for it, and we can come back and help those that are needed to be helped, and not just those that we're related to, that we are then given assignments to be beings of light, which my father coined the phrase, because beings of light means love of light, and to come back and work. And we're workers still from the other side. We still work. We have levels and hierarchies, and there's still politics on the other side. You just don't get out of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you have to live a good life and give back, because, you know, it will give you brownie points, if you will, on the other side. Now, my type B version is if you lived a certain way and you didn't cross for whatever reason and you're stuck, which is what I feel a ghost is, you kind of have it a little bit more difficult. Like the guy at the bar, at the haunted bar, that keeps going back for the drink, and you got the guides there, and if we start talking about angels and we believe in angels helping to pull us, saying, listen, Mac, come on, you got to go. You got to stop reliving this moment. It's over. And Mac won't leave. He refuses to leave the bar. He wants to stay in his drunken stupor. He doesn't want to go to any other realm. He won't let go. He's going to be left there because you can't force that either. So it's very interesting in my theory that we have free will on Earth, but I wonder if we have free will in between, as we call the veil, where maybe even when we're stuck, we choose to remain stuck. We have a choice even then without our bodies, but just our vest of what we once were, that we have free will to say, I'm not leaving. There you go.
From the other side, do we keep coming back? Are we reincarnated?
Reincarnation?
Yes.
Yes, I do strongly believe in that. We have our pre-incarnation, we become incarnate, and then reincarnation. And those three levels dictate the recycling like a Coke can of our souls. And I strongly believe in that. And there's so many stories, including myself, where, and I wouldn't believe this several years ago, I have to tell you, honestly, it's through our own life experiences a lot of times that we can come out and validate this, if you will, and not because of who I am. Just as a human being having an experience of dreams that we were once a certain person, lived a certain life during a certain era. Then that correlates into deja vu. And what does that mean? How do you explain that?
Yeah.
Do we shake it off and say, oh, I thought I was at this place, but I've never been there. I know I'm not crazy, but whatever. And some people will go and look it up and say, oh, my God, what if I lived here 100 years ago? And I had this life. And now I'm here, but I'm connecting to this place, and I don't know why. I strongly 1,000,000% believe that we do recycle and we do come back because we haven't finished our business on Earth, we haven't learned all our life lessons, and that is why we have reincarnation.
But if we're recycled and we come into a different body, different circumstances, different time, how can we finish what we came back to finish if we're not put back into the very same place in time, back into the situation that required finishing?
It's a good question, and unfortunately I can't answer that because it's to each individual to figure it out. That is why they reincarnate, because if that soul hasn't figured out at whatever age, they don't have that awareness. The word awareness is such a strong, powerful, potent word because it means you have that moment. It's called an epiphany. Say, oh my God, I get it now.
Yeah.
I need to stop repeating this history so that I can actually be happy. See, we're here because we want to be happy. We want to love. We want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what we should be doing and do good, and then we should cross. And when we don't do that and we go back towards the dark side, or we're repeating the lessons that we haven't learned, we're never going to get it. That's it. You know, but it's an individual case-by-case aspect, I feel, as a soul that keeps coming back.
Let us say that Aunt Molly goes to see a medium because she wants to connect with Uncle Albert, who's passed away. If Uncle Albert has been reincarnated, does Aunt Molly get to communicate with him?
Possibly. Because now you're okay, and here's another Ghostbusters reference, crossing the streams. You know, why not? I mean, if you're on the other side,
yeah,
and you've lived a couple of lives, and Aunt Molly's is, let's just say she's on the other side, and she's going to be there, and she's not coming back. She's learned all her lessons, and she's done. But her work isn't done for you. She might come back to try to still help you, but there's other people helping as well. So in some cases, it's very possible, in theory, that one person can come back to try to help that soul that keeps coming back until it's done and somebody else is assigned to that case. You know, but again, that's that free will that kicks in.
Oh, that free will.
If you're not going to listen, you're not going to hear it, you're not going to change.
Exonation, my guest this hour, the one and only Alexandra Holzer. Her website is www.alexandraholzer.com. And you're listening to the X Zone live and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network. By the way, before I get back to Alexandra, if you want to know what true radio is meant to be and how it's going to be, listen to my friend Ed Till here on Starcom Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And then Monday through Friday, starting at 8 p.m. live, yours truly here in the X Zone. What, in your opinion, has been your greatest achievement as a researcher, as an investigator, as a seeker of truth?
I don't think I've gotten there. You know, Rob, I don't think I'm not there yet. I think I'll the first 15% of it out of 100 is that I was able to communicate with my father as a child that lost their parent, and as the paradox of who he was the first step. It proved to me that there is something beyond us in the physical realm, that there is a place that we go, and there's many levels to that place and realms, and that was the first step for me. Where I am today is still trying to seek that information and truth to it, and kind of just at this point help those, because I know if that was me, I would want that help. And I think that's where the compassion comes into play. I'm very compassionate over that, because I put myself in the shoes of those that have died and need to talk and have a voice, almost like an animal. We are their voice.
Right.
Animals don't have that voice. And so I kind of put that compassionate play into, and following my partner David Lawson in that theory that you have to have compassion even with those that have passed, because they need a voice. And you know, it just becomes that kind of correlation of human kindness and awareness. And just because you don't have a body doesn't mean you still don't exist.
I can hear your father in your words.
Oh, thank you. That's humbling. Thank you.
I have a lot of respect for your dad, and I also have a lot of respect for you. And I just wish more organizations and more people would take the paranormal or the unknown as seriously as you do. And the fact that you're so compassionate, what can I say except thank you for all your great work?
Well, thank you for supporting me and for saying that. Again, I'm not used to hearing that. I take that very seriously, Rob, and I've known you for so many years. It's not even funny. Oh my God, we have to have a drink together one day. That's how long we've known each other. I feel that there has to be compassion, there has to be love, and there has to be respect. And like you said, it's not about hunting, and it's a horrible term nowadays. And just put yourself in their shoes. When it's your time, and if you get stuck, you need a voice. And if you do cross and come back, you need to be heard, because all you're trying to do is help, communicate. Life is about communication. Life is about experience. And then it's poof, it's gone. And then what's next? Well, who knows? We don't know. It's above us, Rob. It's universal. We cannot possibly know everything. We're not here for that. We're here to be aware as quickly as possible, to do good as quickly as we can, enjoy our time, and take risks and have no fear. Fear is a huge facilitator of basically stopping us in our tracks from doing what we're meant to do.
I have an old friend in Montreal. His name is Gus Ackerman. And Gus had this saying that is so true. You're here for a good time, not for a long time.
Very well said.
Yeah.
I love that. That is, it should be a quote. If he hasn't used that already, that should be a quote.
Why do people who are interested in seeking out the truth about ghosts always go to graveyards? Wouldn't the graveyard be the very last place a ghost or a spirit would want to be?
Well, potentially, unless you're a ghost or a spirit that wants to go back to your gravesite to get Aunt Tilly to come visit the next day that she does religiously with flowers. Say, hey, this is day number 28. Pay attention to me. I've moved the flowers.
Yeah.
You can't explain it, or I've done this, or you smell my perfume. I'm trying to get your attention. In that particular case, that's when they would go, because they need that attention. They're trying to get your attention. And my father said in the best way possible, and I'll put in his Austrian accent for you, graveyards are a waste of real estate property. So basically...
I love that.
But you know what I mean? So it's like I kind of sit there and go, he had a point there. I do believe some of us will stick to our grave sites if we choose to be buried there, and because the religious ones that come back and forth to do the flowers, or they're weeping because that's where they feel we are.
Right.
It's really for the living more than the dead that we have plots, Rob. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's our history, to create this environment where we put ourselves in the ground and we go back and go there because we feel some solace or comfort knowing that that body is in that ground, and so therefore that's where we must be. In many cases, we can still be attached to that, but for various reasons. Now, you can be lost and comb the graveyards, and there's many sightings of that, as you know, over the years, and so forth, and that's very sad, because that's not where they're supposed to be, as we know, like in a haunted environment or the forest or an apartment. That's not moving on, and that's the whole purpose, is to move on, and so therefore they're stuck. And so graveyards included, that part of it is sad.
How can we help those who are stuck to move on? Is there something that we can do? If I was a religious person, would I say if we prayed, would that help? What do you do?
Good question. Well, it's many things that we can do, and of course the outcome is really dependent on the one that's stuck. We can talk to them. We can do a cleansing. We can have communication. We can document. We can have all sorts of things, conversations going in the way that we can do it, which is, in my opinion, broken right now.
Right.
Piecing it together like a puzzle. The only thing we can do is help and communicate. Communication through whatever device, whatever tool, including ourselves, to really say, listen, it's okay. You can move on, and here's why. I hear you. Let me help you. And then at that point, we have to let it go. Because, again, if we have free will here, there is a free will somewhere in between to stay. That still is a part of a connection of what the soul used to be to the vessel, which was our earthly body. So there's not much we can do but try to communicate in that health and hope for the best, that they will see that light, quote-unquote, and then move forward to greener pastures and then be able to come back if they're meant to be, and that's that reincarnation bit that we were talking about before.
I often wonder how many times the case is that it's the person on this side who actually holds the spirit from crossing.
Well, there are those that will contaminate that environment, keep the spirit there for their own reasons. They bait them. Mm-hmm. They come back to get the evidence because it's a hotbed, if you will. I think if we feed into that energy and we go back to a purported site that has issues, and we're constantly documenting them and saying, hey, come out, where are you?
Right.
It draws back that energy, and I think it keeps them there. But I also feel part of it is that they keep themselves there as well. So it's not just one component, it's a mixed component. But I don't think humans help to that situation. I think some people do attribute to keeping some there for different reasons.
I understand you've got a couple of film projects going, and that you also have a new book coming out.
I do. I have, there's a couple of scripted projects that we have out that are going right now. Mm-hmm. And God willing that it goes through, but it's really out of respect for my father, and I think a long time coming. And I have Ghost Gal's been out for a while, and she's a fiction novel based on my father and I, but based in Manhattan in the 1960s, which, of course, I wasn't born then. But it gives that father-daughter duo of a legacy,
right,
which is not usual today. And we're working on the second book now. We've pitched her as well for possible TV and film because it's just such a unique way to go about it. And then the other things we have, I have a children's book coming out. It's a creepy book for kids, but it's not too creepy.
It can't be any worse than vampires, for goodness sake.
No, and you know what? In this book, I don't think I don't. Well, wait a minute. No, I don't think we had vampires in this first one, but we might in the second, Rob. I don't know. Vampires do well, but I have. They do.
Yeah, they do.
But I have. That's going to be coming out soon, and I write a lot of articles. I write for Supernatural magazine, based in the UK, and Wake magazine based in the Carolinas.
Oh my gosh!
I do like to get articles out just for people to kind of get a feel for the field and my personal experiences and interviewing other people on their experiences and so forth. So we do have a lot of things in the fire cooking.
My dear friend, the time has come for us to say so long for tonight. This hour went by so fast. Please, don't be a stranger. The door is always open. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight, Alexandra.
Oh, Rob, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Anytime.
All right, my dear friend, take care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet back here in the X Zone. Until then, be well and be safe.
Sir.